you get to learn something from it. We are going to learn about some hidden history of slavery, how Black American people actually, this story, it says weak Black American people were kidnapped and taken all the way to the United States of America. So we want to discuss that. Yeah, many people have different perspectives. Some people say Africans were already in USA. Some people say Africans were taken from USA. So we are here to discuss that for 30 minutes. Yeah. So I'm waiting for you guys to join before we can start the stories. Yes. I think that's better. Yeah. So I'll start with saying exploration and colonization. You know, Africans came to the New World in the earliest days of the age of exploration. In the early 1500s, Africans trekked across the many lands in North, Central, and Southern America that were claimed by Spain, some coming in freedom and some in slavery, working as soldiers, interpreters, and servants. So Africans were working in different ways. You see, the Western media does not tell us that Africans, some of them were slaves, and some of them were working as soldiers, some of them were working as interpreters or servants. We are not told that. We are only told that our forefathers were slaves, but that is not the entire truth. So, explorers of African descent joined the expedition of Francisco Vasquez de Coronado, Ponce de Leon, and Hernan Cortes, Hernan de Soto, and many more. We have also somebody like Esteban de Dorantes, also known as Estevanico, who was born in Morocco and held in slavery by a Spanish captain. So some of these Africans were even working in collaboration with these people who are sailing this ship, because it was a new age. Like today we have the technological era with the internet and the AI revolution. So that time it was the voyage revolution. You see, people were trying to find sea routes, because India was a place where a lot of materials were being brought from. China had a lot of silk. So the Turkish Empire, the Ottoman Empire, had blocked the sea route to India. And so these European people were trying to find a new sea route to India. And so they were just following the winds and the winds and the winds. So in the exploration of searching for a sea route to India is how they got themselves in Africa. But some Africans were not forced into those ships. Some Africans were working in those ships. They worked voluntarily. They were explorers, according to this hidden document, if you want to know. So there's an African who was born in Morocco, and he was held in slavery by a Spanish captain. He traveled from Cuba to what is now Florida, was shipwrecked near Galveston, and served as a scout and interpreter on long journeys throughout Mexico and the land that is now the state of New Mexico. I'm loving this history because Africans did not only come to USA as slaves. I'm not talking of now that slavery ended. Africans came there. Some came there voluntarily as interpreters. Some came there as soldiers. Some came there as merchants. It was not slavery. That one we should do away with it. But the interesting part is coming. As European powers increasingly sought to establish long-term colonies in the Americas, increasing number of Africans came to these continents. This one was worrying these white people. So, often against their will, Africans were increasing against the will of the white people. So free and enslaved Africans lived in Spanish Florida by the late 16th century. And in 1619, a year before English pilgrims arrived at Plymouth, Massachusetts, a group of 20 and odd African people was brought to England's Jamestown colony in Virginia in captivity. You see, there is something that is building up. These individuals, by these individuals I mean the African Americans, had been caught up in the transatlantic slave trade a web of international commerce and human suffering that was entangling Europe, the Americas, and Africa. As it expanded these institutions, as it expanded, this institution would bring about profound changes in society, politics, and everyday life on multiple continents, and would shape the African experience in America for centuries to come. How much this slave trade, it was something that the rich people enjoyed because they found profit and a lot of profit, but they didn't know Africans were going to suffer. Many generations were going to suffer from what they do today. Whatever we experience today, whatever the black Americans experience in America today, we have the police brutality, racism, we have discrimination, we have misconduct, you are not treated as a fair human, you are always underprivileged. All these were caused by the slave trade. You see, these are now just the consequences of the action that these people had taken back then. So it's important to understand one thing. Most of the slaves who were taken to America were taken from West Africa. Key word that we should note here is that most of the slaves. So West Africa before the slave trade. At the dawn of the era of transatlantic slavery, Africa was a vast and diverse land, the home of many ancient cultures and more than 800 languages. Africa, so we are very diverse and very unified at the same time. Diverse and unified at the same. We speak many languages, but we understand each other. This you can only find in Africa. You see, black Americans, even though you guys are speaking the same language, you speak like one language or maybe two languages. Myself, I speak Swahili, I speak Dholuo, I speak English, I speak some Luya, I can speak some Kamba. I can speak like 5 languages. Only one language is which is the white person. I can speak like 5. So we have different languages in Africa, but we are unified with, in as much as this is happening. So if you didn't know something about Africa, is that we have language groups. The 3 main language groups in Africa are the Nilotes, we have the Bantu, and we have the Kushites. We also have the Semites, but the Semites are not so much. We can find them in the north of Africa, the Berbers and the Tuaregs of the Sahara. We can find them up there. So it's important that you understand Africa was such a beautiful, vast land where things flourished until the white man came to Africa and everything was destroyed. So there's somebody called Oluwada Equiano, who was the son of a chief of the Igbo people in West Africa. The Igbo people are mostly found in Nigeria. This person from Igbo was seized and sold into slavery as a small boy. In his autobiography of 1789, he looked back on life in his homeland, remembering it as a charming, fruitful vale. Oh, he could see back the motherland. He could imagine the fruits he could be eating. He could imagine the stress-free life. He could even sleep on the streets. Nobody would bother him. That is the beauty of living in the motherland. I'm always telling you to come to the motherland. If you someday you find some time and the opportunity, do pay the motherland a visit. You'll find things are different here. Here we want to praise you. We won't see you for a black person. We will see you as a fellow human. We will see you as a fellow African. We won't say, hey, look at that black American. No, we will see you as a brother. We will see you as a sister. I'm always telling you this, guys. I'm always telling you. Outside Africa is when we can see that. Outside Africa, we don't have a Senegalese, Tanzanian, or who. That is what the president of Ghana said. He says that outside Africa, he only sees an African and does not see countries. No. Let us not be separated by countries, but let us be joined by our differences. Yeah. So agriculture is our chief employment, and everyone, even the children and the women, are engaged in it. Thus, we are all habituated to labor from our earliest years. One thing I didn't tell you about Africa, we have a lot of work here in Africa. Even the children, there's no breakfast. Most villages don't have breakfast in Africa. It's always working from 6 a.m. to 1 p.m. You're digging, you're plowing, you're planting maize or corn. You're planting bananas, you're planting sweet potatoes, you're planting this and this. Africa, we rely so much on the earth. We rely so much on the ground. We rely so much on what God put here on the ground than we rely so much on the junk foods. That's why there are some diseases that cannot catch up with Africans. Africans, we might be suffering from malaria and all that, but there are some specific lifestyle diseases that does not catch up with Africans. This is something, this is fact, guys. I'm not just saying it is fact. It has been proven. It is true. It is true. Yeah. So everyone contributes something to the common stock in the village, and as we are acquainted with idleness, we have no beggars. The benefits of such mode of livings are obvious. Let me tell you, before the white man came, we didn't have beggars in Africa. Africa is a place where people work hard. People go to the shamba. People go to the field, they dig, they plow, they plant their own food. That is what people always did. Nobody goes hungry. In my village, nobody has ever gone hungry. Somebody who is just full, who is just normal. No, I've not seen that. That village that you can think is poor, that village has a lot of food. They might be poor in terms of structures, the house and all that, but food. Children from that village are very healthy. Children from that village are fat. This tells you that Africa is a blessing, not what you are being told by the Western media that Africa is poor, Africa this and that. No. If you don't have anywhere to ask, but you only have God to ask, that is when you understand that you have the greatest source, you have the greatest power, because God said, you shall plow the earth and you shall eat from the earth. Here we don't eat synthetic foods. The white person might have brought synthetic foods, but we rely on the ground. And before the white man came, we didn't have beggars. We didn't have that. So, we want to discuss something called a global network of suffering. The expansion of the transatlantic trade disrupted in West and Central African societies, and over the centuries would extract an immeasurable human toll. Europeans had first made contact with African societies centuries before. By Europeans, I mean the Portuguese. They were the very, very first to step foot on Africa. And these Europeans had a long maintained trading post on the continent's coasts. As European colonies in the Americas expanded, though, their governments increasingly looked to Africa for a source of cheap labor to power their growing farms, mines, and plantation. Africans as a cheap source of labor. I don't think they should say cheap source of labor. They should say oppression. Because if you say cheap source of labor, it's like you're going to pay them. Even though it's little, you're going to, we were not being paid. Africans are not being paid. You were working till you die, which is not right. It's not right. A child is working forever in their life. You're never going to school, but just working. Our ancestors really suffered, and it's time you guys come back to the motherland and rejoice. This is where you came from. At least, even if you don't want to live in Africa, just come and try to see for yourself what's happening. Is it Evans from Kenya? Is he saying something worthwhile, or am I just bluffing, or am I just blabbing, or what else do I want? Why should I sit here? Actually, this channel is not earning money right now, which tells you that I'm doing it from the heart. You should get it from me that once in a while you'll try and come. Once you arrive to Africa, I promise you, if you contact me, I will help you out with your activities, this and that. That one I assure you before everyone. So, beginning in the 16th century and for centuries after, Spanish and Portuguese, French and Dutch traders systematically purchased large numbers of African people. Like Africans were so, we were like items. You just go somewhere and you get us from there, and you bring us here, and you sell us, and you put a price tag on us, which I don't think it's right. It's not right to put a price tag on someone. We are all humans. We are all created on the image and likeness of the Most High. We are all created in the image and likeness of God. That is what I believe. But the Portuguese, the Spanish, the French, and the Dutch, they saw us as commodities. So they purchased Africans in large numbers, many of whom had been captured by the traders, African allies in war or in raid. So some Africans were selling some Africans. That is the sad part. The sad part is that the Western people, or the white person, when he came, he found a weakness. He found that African villages were fighting with African villages, or one African tribe was fighting with another African tribe. And so he took advantage of this. What did he do? He came and he brought the divide and conquer. He brought division and he conquered. He did not only conquer, he conquered and sold us into slavery. That is what the white man did to our brothers and our sisters, our fathers and our mothers, our grandfathers and our grandmothers. Like, everything you're experiencing now in USA is because even some Africans sold some Africans into slavery. In as much as there is rule of law, rule of war, we can never break this rule of war. We have prisoners of war. We can't sell prisoners of war. The Geneva Convention, there's a clause that states a prisoner of war should be treated with a certain kind of respect. That's always there, you know? So these Africans sold other Africans and transported them to the American colonies for permanent enslavement. Some forms of slavery had already existed in the region, but large-scale abduction and transportation of people, as well as the treatment of enslaved people and their descendants as permanent property, were not common. Soon, countless cargo ships were crossing the Atlantic, carrying shiploads and shackled people to the Americans, often then bringing raw materials home to Europe. So Africans were taken from Africa all the way to America, from America to Europe. Yeah, that is what they did, and I can't rejoice on that. It's not good. It's not interesting. It is estimated that during the many centuries of the transatlantic slave trade, more than 10 million people were enslaved and transported from Africa to the Americas. 10 million people were enslaved and transported from Africa to the Americas. That number is staggering. Of these, several hundred thousands were sent to the 13 British colonies and later the United States. We may never know a precise number, but some estimates hold that more than 1 million people died on the journey to the Americas. The survivors faced a harsh life in the other land. Hey, this must have been very, very, very saddening. Very, very saddening. It's even hard to research on this. It's really, really hard, let me tell you. So, while Europeans owned and operated the slave ship, the work of kidnapping new victims was generally left to West Africans. You see, Africans were selling Africans to slavery. The person, it was like, go and hunt. You bring us the game and we will pay you. So hunters were the Africans. The hunted was the Africans. And the buyer was the white person. You know, this thing is saddening me. I don't know whether you can get the intensity of this. If you're watching, kindly share your comment section. You can tell us where you're watching the video from. Kindly. Bands of slavers would roam the African countryside, preying on the villagers who let their guard down. So the person I mentioned earlier, who was called Oluwada Equiano, was abducted when he was only 8 years old. Imagine an 8-year-old child being kidnapped. 8-year-old child being kidnapped. How ruthless were these people? Just imagine whatever is happening in Hamas, in Israel-Palestine border, the Gaza region. You know what happened. I don't want to talk it here. That thing happened back then to the Africans. An 8-year-old child being abducted by a fellow African. In fact, a grown-up man capturing a baby, a child, and selling him or her to slavery. These people are not having a good mind. Thank you so much. DE Raptor, watching from West Africa. Thank you so much. How is West Africa doing? I hope everything is okay. We have mega jackpot winner, Brooklyn, New York. How is New York doing? Thank you so much. Joe Shelton, Rochester, New York. Thank you so much. I appreciate a lot. Okay, so I decided to remind us of something that happened. That is why we are holding this today. Thank you guys for watching the video, and kindly continue. The live stream is only set for 30 minutes, so I'll be ending it in 9 minutes time. Okay, thank you, mega jackpot winner. Thank you so much. So Oluda Equiano was abducted when he was only 8 years old. One day when all our people were gone, so he's telling a story. Okay, let me start. One day when all our people were gone out to their works as usual, and only I and my sister were left to mind the house, 2 men and a woman got over our walls and in a moment seized us both. And without giving us time to cry out or make resistance, they stopped our mouth and ran off with us into the nearest wood. Here they tied our hands and continued to carry us as far as they could, till night came on, when we reached a small house where the robbers halted for refreshment and spent the night. We were then unbound, but we were unable to take any food, and being quite overpowered by fatigue and grief. Our only relief was some sleep. This is a child telling the encounters he faced when he was abducted and taken to the Americas. He was abducted by fellow Africans. So sad. So sad. It sometimes took several months to transport captives to the coast, and they often were sold and resold to several new owners along the way. Once they reached the coast, some captives were taken to slave forts or compounds, where they were waited for a slave vessel to arrive. Many of these fortresses still stand on the coast of Africa, at places like Elmina and Goree Island, as ruined monuments to the cruel economy of the past, to the cruel economy of the years past. It was really cruel, very, very cruel. This is so bad. So once a slave ship was ready, the Africans were handed over to their new captors, Europeans and Americans, who would take them on their journey to the Americas. Imagine an African selling an African. Oh my God. I can't just comprehend this. It's like, hey, an African selling a fellow African to a white person for money. This is so bad. Oh, thank you, African Live. Thank you, African Dive, for you are watching live from Kenya. Thank you so much, Mr. Dennis. I appreciate. So, the Middle Passage, we have something called the Middle Passage. For the captive Africans aboard a slave ship, the voyage to the New World was a passage of nearly unimaginable horror. For most captives, the separation from their villages and families was still fresh, and now they were thrust into a hostile and alien world. At the mercy of people who were like none they had never seen before. So these people are used to seeing black people. All of a sudden, black people hand them over to people who are very white. They are wondering, where are we? And what is this we are putting, we are on? Upon boarding, they were stripped of their belongings, branded, chained, and sent below decks, where they would be forced to remain for most of the month's long journey. Oh my God, this is brutal. These people, I don't know whether they got to heaven. I don't know. I really don't know. Let God be the judge. Me, I can't talk. Okay, D.E. Raptor is saying the ship owners are who we call Jews today. Really? The Jews? The Muslim Africans are the sellers. The plantation owners in America are Caucasian. In South America, Spanish and Portuguese Jews who converted to Christians. So for short, it is Muslim, the Jews, and the Europeans. This is insane. It's insane. The very fact that an African, be it a Muslim African, be it an African with the African religion, or a Christian African, selling a fellow African to slavery, is just mind-blowing. I can't believe. Kimberly Strotter, watch Roots, 12 years of slavery. Oh my God. These things, I don't know. It's so painful, so painful. But the good thing is that we need to remind ourselves of the past in order to heal in the present. We need to understand the triggers. What is causing all these conflicts we are hearing? Where did it all start? Where did it all start? It all started when the African accepted to sell a fellow African. There is where the Pandora box was open. The slave deck itself was a living nightmare. To the slave traders, these human beings were cargo, and slave ships were especially designed to transport as many captives as possible, with little regard for their health or their humanity. Slave decks were often only a few feet high, and the African captives were shackled together, lying down, side by side, head to foot, or even closer. Deaths from suffocation, malnutrition, and disease were routine on the slave docks. Routine. Death, diseases were being routine. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Deaths from suffocation, malnutrition, and disease were routine on the slave decks, as were arbitrary torture and murder by the crew. The closeness, the filth, and the fear delivered many into madness, and suicide attempts were common. Other ships could smell slavers from far away, and Portuguese sailors called them tuberois, or floating tombs. So Africans were dying, and these people were not caring. They were just calling them tuberois, or floating tombs. Hey, can't believe. I can't believe. D.E. Raptor, this history needs to be taught in Africa. This is a big part of the healing process. Yeah, it needs to be taught. Even Africans need to understand what happened. We need to tell each other these sad stories. We need to talk. It must be told. It must be told. Oluwada Ekuyano described his journey. The closeness of the place and the heat of the climate added to the number in the ship, which was so crowded that each had scarcely room to turn himself, almost suffocated us. This wrenched situation was again aggravated by the galling of the chains, now became unsupportable, and the filth of the necessary tubs, into which the children often fell, and were mostly suffocated. The shrieks of the women and the groans of the dying rendered the whole a scene of horror, almost inconceivable. Hey. Can't imagine. Those who are not killed by conditions on board are often permanently disabled by beatings or diseases. Oh my God. Many slave captains threw sick or injured Africans aboard so that their losses would be covered by insurance. Oh my. This is very sad. I'm starting to have problems reading this. Though they were shackled, sickened, and outnumbered, captive Africans frequently fought back against their tormentors. One on more than 300 voyages, the captives on the slave decks attempted to overthrow the crew, and in several cases, they triumphed. In 1839, the victorious Africans on the slave ship Amistad even succeeded in sailing the ship into port and eventually returned home in freedom. Way! Yes, 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 yes. So the Raptor. Sharks followed the slave ships across the Atlantic. It's obvious because people are stinking, bloods are pouring down. So the shark is always very sensitive to the blood and the human smell. So they must have followed that because they were having free food. So guys, tomorrow we will discuss Africans in America in another history lesson. So for now, I will end the interview unless we have any questions. If you have any questions, we'll talk through the questions and we'll do the rest tomorrow. Kimberly Strotter. Gambia shipped a lot of us here to America. Alex Halley was presented an award for discovering his roots back to Gambia. Amasted has a movie. Okay, yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting. I didn't know Gambia held such a big number of slaves who were taken from Africa. I always thought it was Ghana and Nigeria, mostly. This is so sad. So guys, that's all for today. Kindly do subscribe to the channel. It really helps your boy grow. Thank you so much, mega jackpot winner. Thank you so much. 2 million slaves died through slave trade. Oh my God. Oh my God. My estimates were even lower. 2 million. Oh my God. This is so sad. So guys, kindly, if you want to support your boy, do go to my Patreon. Be a member of my Patreon. There you can be able to support my work. And I'm sure to tell you this. If you need any help from Africa, even if you are in Africa right now and watching this video and you need some assistance of how to live, how to acquire land, and how to rent houses and all that, I can be able to help you. And trust me, my ways are honest and my ways are transparent. Yeah. For now, I'll end the live stream. Thank you for watching, and kindly do support your boy. Thank you so much.